So welcome back to this segment with Kat, as we're going to be learning a little bit more about her IVF experience. So last time we chatted, Kat was waiting for her appointment to find out when the surgery was going to be to harvest her eggs. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, make sure to go do that. We talk a lot about what Kat had gone through thus far, and also why we decided to document this process, what we hope to share with you guys, and what we hope that you guys will be getting out of it. So if you haven't yet, check that out. The link will be below. But now we're back with Kat. It's been a couple weeks, so I think a lot has happened in these couple of weeks. So we're just excited to hear kind of what has happened since we last chatted, how you're feeling, and what we can look forward to what's coming up.
Yeah, it has been a monster couple weeks. I think that going into this process, I had an expectation that it was going to be challenging, and it has been challenging in completely different ways than I expected. So I thought I was going to be like super hormonal and cranky and like that was going to be like the real struggle. And like I've had a couple days where I've just been unreasonably bitchy and I've been very much aware of that. But aside from like a couple days, I really haven't had too much. I think last time we chatted, like I was intermittently having some pretty extreme fatigue, which has definitely continued. And then when we chatted last, I was waiting to go to hear about my egg collection. So I went in for a scan on a Friday, and then I went in for another one on a Monday. At Monday scan, they said I had like about 21 follicles, and they were so kind of expecting to get like 15, 16 eggs from that. And they arranged for me to have the surgery on the Thursday. So that was great news. I got my trigger injection, everything all ready to go.
What's the trigger injection?
So trigger injection is just like a massive dose of HCG. So essentially at that point, I was on 2 injections in the morning. I was on 1 injection to stimulate my follicles to grow and develop and produce mass quantity of eggs. I called myself the chicken factory. And then at the same time, I was taking an injection. So if you kind of think about like the gas in the car, then I was on like a brake injection as well, so that while I was like continuing to mature these follicles, I was taking a second injection to make sure that I didn't actually release an egg. So I wanted to keep them there, and then so continued those, and then I had an HCG trigger, which was essentially like to take in 36 hours before my op to prepare me for harvest. So from like a scheduling standpoint, it was a bit of a nightmare. I knew when we started this process that we had a lot going on. We had weddings out of town and stuff that we had to be at, but we thought we couldn't swing it all. We had a death in the immediate family that day that I had my appointment. And so obviously the whole schedule got really thrown out, but I couldn't change any of my surgery dates. So at Monday's appointment, they told me to expect surgery on the Thursday, but still didn't know what time and didn't find out until Wednesday night. So it was very last minute, having to reschedule clients and things like that, because I know it's a general anesthetic, very quick surgery, but I know from experience with generals that like I'm pretty dopey. So I was hoping to be an afternoon case. So first, because I was first thing in the morning, naturally. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to take any clients that day. So I rebooked everyone and popped in at 7 a.m. to get things started.
Oh my gosh.
So by that point, by the Monday prior to the surgery, I was like starting to waddle, and I couldn't like walk without supporting my abdomen with my hands. I was so swollen. I was so big. It felt like I was like, there's nothing like in me, and I feel like something is going to drop out of my vagina.
Really?
Yeah, like I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to handle this when I'm like actually have a baby in there?
Yeah, I wonder how it will compare.
Yeah. And I was so swollen. Monday night, I called Benin. I was really concerned because I was like the size of like a small basketball. Like I looked like I was 5 months pregnant at that point. And you can go into like ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, which is, you know, just can be caused by massive amounts of swelling. It can lead to problems like ascites and drops in your blood pressure and can be quite dangerous.
The detriment of having a medical background and going through something like this, because you know all the possibilities.
Yeah.
Going on.
It's like, it's so much worse because I'm like, okay, I'm still peeing. I'm not nauseated. So like, I'm still getting blood flow to all my organs. So I don't think it's that bad, but I was so swollen. I was up almost 5 kilos from baseline. And then I just had this huge belly. And Ben came because we'd driven home and I was like, oh God, these pants are really uncomfortable. And then I realized I was wearing this like loose, flowy maxi dress.
Oh.
I was like, oh God. So I called Ben in and his face was just like, So anyways, that was by Monday and my surgery wasn't until Thursday. So for basically the next 3 days, I was like waddling around holding my belly. And then I just kind of thought like they're going in. So essentially like you go in, you get general anesthetic. They use an ultrasound probe to go up and then they pierce through the wall into the ovaries and they collect all of the fluid that had the eggs in it. And then they harvest whatever they can from then. So they do that on both sides. So I woke up from my general in quite a good mood. Everything was great. Recovered out of there within like an hour and a half, super fast. And in my head, I just had it like, okay, well, they've collected all of these eggs. They've sucked out all the fluid. So I'm going to have all this swelling go down and I'm going to have a big flush of fluid, all this fluid I've accumulated and I'm going to be fine.
Not the case.
I was not fine. Spoiler alert. So I was pretty out of it that day. And I went back to the gym the next day thinking I'd be able to work out as normal. And I started having this really bad uterine ovarian cramping that I used to get on like day 15 of my cycle. It's called middle schmerz. And so I was like, okay. I was like, can't really do that much working out. Still bloated, still walking around holding my belly. By Sunday, I called the nurses back because I was like, is this normal that this isn't resolving?
Right.
But again, same thing. They were like, well, if you're peeing, you're not nauseated, like carry on. It's fine. They're like, you can go take some like Tylenol 3s or some codeine if you want. I was like, yeah.
Kind of warn you about the potential symptoms too.
Well, they do, but they're like, you know, it's like, oh, you'll be a bit swollen and sore.
Right.
I was like, this is not a bit. Like, this is massive. I also did have a lot of eggs. Like they were able to collect 15, which is on the higher end of normal or kind of like they don't really let you go much higher than that. Mm-hmm. So I guess it wasn't that unexpected. And so I continued to have some cramping when working out through the week. And I would say by Wednesday, it was pretty much gone and I was pretty much back to normal. So it took like close to a week for it to resolve.
Well, good thing because you had a competition this past weekend too.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben is like all stoked for this competition and with everything that we've had going on our lives, he needed this competition. And I was just like, I don't know, like I feel so out of touch, like, and foreign in my body right now. Mm-hmm. That I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, I don't know if it's a good idea. Medically, my doctor said it was fine. He said, you know, it's not going to cause any problems. I wasn't worried so much about the physical side. I was worried more about the anxiety and the stress and like whether that was like conducive to, you know, what we were doing. And he said, totally fine. So I guess to kind of back it up in reverse. So while I was still pretty symptomatic from the surgery up until Wednesday, on Tuesday, I went back in and had my embryo transfer done. So that was like a nothing. It was basically like getting a pap done. We went in, we got really good news about, so out of the 15 eggs they'd collected, they were able to fertilize 10. We didn't know if when they thawed Ben's sperm, if it would be viable. So that fertilization call was a really big deal to us when we found out that they got so many. But then it was like still kind of like, oh, fingers crossed, like they fertilize, but what if they don't develop over the next few days? So when we went in for a transfer, they said, they're like, oh, you have like the like the, I don't know, diamond of all eggs. So like if this was an engagement ring, like you couldn't afford it, it had like the highest grading possible. And they're like, and you also got 5 other really, really good ones, and they're on ice. They're like, you have 2 others that are still, we're watching them and we might freeze them as well, but they weren't quite sure. And 2 that weren't viable. So again, like the kind of averages for IVF are like 10 eggs collected, 5 to 6 will fertilize, and then out of those you'll get 1 to 2 blastocysts. We have 6 to 8 blastocysts.
Wow.
So yeah, so really good numbers, and we're really happy. And I think for us that was the big thing. That was the big gateway of like, so we didn't know what Ben sperm was going to be like, and so now it's like, okay, regardless of what happens with this cycle, we've got all of these backups on ice, which probably means I don't have to do another stim cycle. Thank God. So it kind of just took the pressure off a little bit.
Right. And so now what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for symptoms? Are you waiting to get some tests done? What exactly happens at this point?
This is like the other part that I didn't really anticipate or think about, or I haven't had any opportunity to talk to anyone who's gone through IVF firsthand. Like I know tons of people have done it, but no one that I'm close to or no one that talks about it. And so this is the other thing. So I did my embryo transfer on Tuesday, and essentially what they want is I need to go back in like 10 days, so next Friday, and do a pregnancy test. I didn't realize how long this 10 days was going to feel.
Right.
Because especially like I've been pregnant in the past, and I know what my body feels like and how it responds and the changes that it goes through, and kind of on the timeline. My boobs have doubled in size. They're so sore. You can't come within 10 feet of me. I've had multiple days of nausea and morning sickness, and I've had days like today where I'm totally fine in that regard. I've had extreme fatigue, like inability to focus on conversations that I'm having. So all of these symptoms that are so typical, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything because I'm on all this progesterone and all this medication that causes all these symptoms.
Right.
So it's like, while I feel like I'm 100% pregnant, it's like, well, you've got another week to wait until you actually find out, for sure. And even that is like, the blood test is usually pretty conclusive, but so technically on Friday coming, I would be 4 weeks if that's positive. But you do wait till the ultrasound 2 weeks later till you can see a heartbeat before you get super excited.
Right.
So, and I didn't realize how long this 10 days of feeling like you're pregnant, but like not like trusting your body and not being like willing to believe it are.
Right. And is there anything specifically that you need to avoid doing right now, or need to be doing, like taking vitamins or anything like that, that's kind of giving you an area to focus on almost?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been on prenatal vitamins, and then this particular fertility specialist has me enrolled in an antioxidant study as well. So I'm taking just a regular prenatal, I'm taking coenzyme Q10, and then just continuing with my 2 grams of fish oil and 2,000 IUs of vitamin D every day. So that's easy enough. Like that's been going for ages, but it's like you're on pregnancy precautions as soon as they do the transfer, right? So it's like, okay, you want to minimize your caffeine intake to 200 milligrams a day, which is essentially like 1 cup of coffee. Didn't think that was going to be such a big deal. I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'll be fine. Our fucking Nespresso machine broke last week. So I've got all these decaf coffee pods and I have no machine to make them in. So all we have is real coffee, and I get like 1 cup a day, and I feel like I'm on poverty rations. Like, please, sir, may I have some more?
Especially with the extreme fatigue that you're dealing with as well, it would just make
Yeah.
it difficult.
Yeah, and look, like I've done a lot of research into caffeine, and essentially the current research is saying that everything we've warned about in the past was grossly overstated, and that we don't actually know if caffeine has any effect on the developing fetus. So it may be perfectly fine to keep your caffeine intake, up to 4 cups a day. But it's kind of one of those things that it's like, okay, new research is showing us this, but you just want to not push things.
Yeah.
right? So I'm
You
like, okay, I'd still probably rather stick to the old guidelines.
right. You want to
That's
make it feel like you're doing everything possible within your control to make to make the outcome like you want, right?
exactly. And, I've told clients that in the past. I'm like, look, the research is showing this, you can go ahead. But yeah, now that I'm in this position, I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep it to like one a day. Um, Weird things like I've started drinking like grocery store kombucha, not real kombucha. And I'm super like into that. But I'm like, oh, there's like alcohol, there's caffeine, it's fermented. Most grocery store stuff is going to be pasteurized, so it's probably fine. But again, it's one of those things I'm like, I'll probably just stay away from it, at least like in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we have so much crap food in the house right now just from other events going on and funerals and stuff like that. So there's all this like brie and like meats and things like that. And I'm just like, I just want cheese and meat platters.
Do you have like, are you having any cravings?
I've been craving pickles since right around the time of transfer, but I think that's related to the progesterone that I'm taking. I think it's like because like increased diuresis, I'm craving more salt.
Right.
So I wouldn't say I'm having like real cravings.
Well, there's a lot to look forward to in the next coming week, and we'll be sure to not let it go as long next time so we don't have as much to catch up on, but we can chat about
Yeah, I feel like there was just a lot of nuts and bolts catch up there.
yeah, a lot. But I definitely have a good understanding of what's going on, so I hope that everyone listening does as well. And we'll look forward to hearing how your test goes on Friday.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
Very exciting. How are you feeling about that? Like anxious, excited?
Just like I just want to know. I just want to know what the next step is.
Yeah. This is
you
like the
know,
longest you've gone without like something in between that you need to do, right? Or something.
yeah, absolutely. And it's just like you just don't know how to like map out and plan out everything, right? But I mean, maybe that's just like training for having children.
Yeah.
Right. But it's been a really cool experience. And I've, because again, very open about it. Like even Ben and I competed in a local throwdown yesterday, and I vomited before our first workout, which is not like me. And so I was pretty pale. And so I had lots of people like coming up and like asking how I was. And I was just like, yeah, like I've been better. We're going through IVF right now. So it's just, I'm feeling a bit off. But it's like led to having like a lot of really cool discussions with people, particularly women, about their experiences. And, I was talking to someone yesterday about she miscarried quite recently, and it was the same thing. She's just like, I just felt like I wasn't allowed to talk about it or like grieve openly. It's like to the point where it's like not necessarily in her case, but for so many women, they're like, oh, I felt like I couldn't take a sick day from work because people were questioning what was going on, and so it's been a lot of interesting conversations like that. And I think that's a big part of the reason why we're doing this podcast at all, is to like open up that forum and make it okay to talk about, right? Because it's like when you realize, it's like when you literally can't have a conversation with a group full of women of childbearing age without people being like, yeah, oh, I've been through that, I've done that, or I've had that. It's like, okay, so it's all of us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for sharing up until this point, and we look forward to hearing everything else that's to come.
Yes,
No
stay
ending to
tuned.
these videos. It's just there's always going to be something on the go, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'm puking for a reason, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, we'll catch you in the next one. I'll sit down next week and see how the appointment went.
Okay, sounds good.